Imagine this. You come home from work, pull into your driveway, and notice your power bill is climbing higher and higher every month. At first, you think it's just inflation, maybe an error by the utility company. But then, you catch the culprit. Your neighbor, your HOA Karen, secretly plugging her Tesla into your home and draining your power. What would you do? This is the story of how one homeowner uncovered a shocking abuse of trust, exposed the petty entitlement of an HOA bully, and delivered a lesson so powerful it left sparks flying, literally. And tonight, you're going to hear the truth, fact by fact, detail by detail, in a way that feels almost unbelievable. Meet Daniel, a software engineer in his mid-30s, quiet, practical, the kind of guy who worked long hours and came home to relax in peace. He lived in a suburban neighborhood in Nevada, where houses were neat, lawns were trimmed, and the HOA ruled like a shadow government. Daniel didn't complain much. He paid his dues, followed the rules, and expected the same from everyone else. But across the street lived Karen. Yes, her name really was Karen, and if there ever were a living embodiment of entitlement, she was it. Always demanding, always complaining, and always convinced the world owed her more than everyone else. She had just bought a brand new Tesla, sleek, white, shining in her driveway like a trophy. But there was one problem. She didn't want to pay to charge it. At first, Daniel didn't notice. His power bills crept up, maybe $30 here, $50 there. He thought, okay, maybe I'm running the AC more than usual. Maybe the rates went up. But when the bill nearly doubled in 1 month, he knew something was wrong. He checked every appliance, unplugged unused devices, even replaced light bulbs with energy-efficient LEDs. Still, the meter spun faster than it should. Then came the night. Everything changed. Around midnight, Daniel stepped outside to take out the trash. That's when he saw it. A thick orange extension cord running from the side of his house, across the street, and into Karen's garage. His jaw dropped. She wasn't just stealing his power, she had been doing it for weeks, maybe months, without a single ounce of shame. Imagine that moment. The realization hits you like a punch. The neighbor who constantly lectured others about HOA rules was the same person sneaking across the street like a thief in the night, milking your electricity to keep her luxury car running. The hypocrisy burned hotter than the Nevada sun. Daniel didn't confront her immediately. Instead, he began documenting everything. He took photos of the cord, logged the times it appeared, even compared his meter readings. And the numbers didn't lie. A Tesla Model Y plugged into a regular outlet consumes about 12 kilowatt hours in a single night. At Nevada's rates, that meant Karen was quietly draining nearly $40 to $50 of electricity every week. Multiply that across months, and Daniel was paying hundreds, literally funding her luxury lifestyle. The more Daniel thought about it, the angrier he became. It wasn't just theft, it was betrayal. This was someone who called HOA security when kids played too loudly at the park. Someone who fined neighbors for leaving trash bins out an hour too long. And here she was, siphoning electricity like it was her birthright. But Daniel wasn't the type to lash out blindly. He wanted a solution, one that not only exposed Karen's entitlement, but taught her a lesson she would never forget. And so, the plan began. First, he called the HOA. He explained the situation calmly, providing photos and meter records. Their response? Sir, unless you have video evidence of her plugging in, there's not much we can do. Typical HOA, ready to fine you for grass height, but powerless when their own Karen Queen Bee was the culprit. Next, he contacted the local police. Their response was equally disappointing. Technically, sir, it's theft of services, but unless the value crosses a certain threshold, it's not a priority case. Weeks of stolen power, brushed aside like pocket change. Daniel realized something crucial. If justice wasn't coming from the HOA, and it wasn't coming from the police, it would have to come from him. And this is where his quiet, calculating personality turned into his greatest weapon. He researched Tesla charging systems, voltage tolerances, and household surge protectors. What he learned was fascinating. While Teslas have built-in protections, improper or unstable power sources can trip errors and sometimes cause serious damage to the battery pack. Daniel didn't want to destroy her car outright. That could land him in legal hot water. But if he could design a surge trap, something subtle that made the theft backfire on Karen, the message would be loud and clear. Days of planning turned into nights of tinkering. Finally, he wired a device, a carefully disguised surge inverter, attached to the outlet Karen had been stealing from. To anyone else, it looked normal. But once her Tesla latched on, the results would be far from normal. And so the stage was set. Daniel waited. He knew Karen's routine by now. Late nights, slipping the cord across, charging until dawn. That night, he turned off his porch lights, sat back, and watched from the shadows. Just as expected, the cord slithered across the driveway like a snake, the plug clicked in, and the car began to hum. At first, everything seemed normal. The charging lights pulsed, the battery indicator glowed. Then, slowly, the surge trap kicked in. The car's system hiccuped. Warning lights flashed, error codes beeped across the dashboard, and then silence. The Tesla shut down. Its mighty battery pack fried. From across the street, Daniel watched Karen's panic unfold. She rushed outside in her robe, staring at the lifeless machine like a queen without her crown. She tried unplugging, replugging, pressing buttons, even calling Tesla roadside support. But nothing worked. The battery was bricked. For Daniel, it was poetic justice. The thief who drained his power was now powerless herself. But dear listener, this was just the beginning of the storm, because what came next shook the entire neighborhood, shattered Karen's reign, and exposed the ugly truth about HOA power dynamics.
The silence of Karen's Tesla was louder than thunder. For someone who flaunted her car like a badge of superiority, watching it sit there, lifeless, frozen, was nothing short of humiliation. But humiliation wasn't the only thing burning. Her fury was about to ignite the neighborhood. The next morning, Karen stormed into Daniel's driveway. Her sunglasses barely covered the rage in her eyes, and her voice cut through the quiet street. "Did you do something to my car?" she barked. Daniel, calm as ever, leaned on his porch rail and said evenly, "Karen, you've been stealing my power for months. You bricked your own car." For a moment, the world seemed to pause. Neighbors peeking through blinds whispered. Kids froze mid-bike ride. Everyone knew Karen as the HOA queen, loud and titled, untouchable. And now, the facade cracked. Karen tried to deny it. "That's a lie. I've never touched your outlets." But Daniel had something she couldn't argue with. Proof. He pulled out his phone, flipping through photos of the extension cord, the glowing meter, the timestamps. Each image was a nail in the coffin of her denial. Finally, he played the video, recorded from a discreet camera he had installed just days before, showing her plugging in the cord under the cover of night. Karen's face drained of color. The HOA queen, caught red-handed, stripped of her crown. But instead of apologizing, instead of admitting her theft, she doubled down. "I'm entitled to this. HOA rules say utilities are community responsibility." It was a lie, and everyone knew it. Within hours, the street buzzed with gossip. Some laughed quietly, others shook their heads. For months, many had endured Karen's petty complaints. Grass too tall, fences the wrong color, trash cans out 5 minutes late. And now the great enforcer of rules was exposed as the biggest rule breaker of them all. But Karen wasn't done. She marched straight to the HOA office, heels clicking like war drums. Bursting through the door, she accused Daniel of sabotage, claimed he had deliberately damaged her Tesla, that he owed her thousands in repairs. The HOA board, loyal to their queen bee, called an emergency meeting. Daniel received the notice. Homeowner required to appear before the board regarding misconduct. He knew what this was. Karen's last desperate attempt to flip the narrative. But Daniel also had something Karen underestimated: the truth, backed by cold, undeniable facts. The night of the meeting, the room was packed. Neighbors filled every seat, some standing along the walls eager to see the showdown. Karen sat at the front, arms crossed, glaring daggers at Daniel. The board president cleared his throat. "We've received a complaint of property sabotage. Daniel, would you like to respond?" Daniel rose slowly, calm, deliberate. He pulled a small USB stick out of his pocket and slid it across the table. "Everything you need is on here: photos, videos, meter logs. Play it." The board hesitated, then loaded the files. The screen lit up. Footage rolled of Karen dragging the cord across the street, plugging in her Tesla, and sneaking back home. Another clip showed the meter spinning wildly, then screenshots of Daniel's bills, rising like a graph of theft. Gasps filled the room. Karen's defense crumbled in real time. Her voice cracked as she tried to spin excuses. "It was just temporary. Daniel said I could. He's making this up." But no one believed her. The evidence was a mountain, her words pebbles thrown against it. And then came the twist Daniel had prepared for. He revealed the exact calculation. Over 3 months, Karen stole $470 worth of power. That's theft, and I have already filed a report with the utility company and the police. This isn't just HOA business. This is criminal. The board went silent. For the first time, Karen looked small. The queen bee, cornered, powerless. Neighbors who once feared her now whispered openly. Some even laughed. Her empire of intimidation collapsed under the weight of her own arrogance. But Daniel didn't gloat. He stood tall, calm, and said simply, "I don't want revenge. I want accountability. We all live here. We all follow the rules. Nobody, not even Karen, is above them." The words struck deeper than any punishment. The board deliberated for a tense 20 minutes. When they returned, the verdict was swift. Karen was fined for misconduct, ordered to repay Daniel for the stolen electricity, and placed on probation with the HOA. Any further violations, and she would face removal from the community. For the neighborhood, it was a moment of liberation. The tyrant of petty rules was dethroned, her power dimmed like her dead Tesla. And for Daniel, it was victory, not of anger, but of justice. Yet the story didn't end there, because Karen, humiliated, plotted her next move. And Daniel, though victorious, knew this war was not over. What happened next would test the very limits of community, justice, and one man's patience against the endless entitlement of an HOA Karen.
Karen may have been cornered, but she wasn't finished. People like her never admit defeat. They double down. Days after the HOA hearing, Daniel received a knock at his door. It wasn't a neighbor. It was a sheriff's deputy, holding a folded piece of paper. "You've been served," the deputy said flatly. Karen had filed a lawsuit. The claim? She accused Daniel of intentionally sabotaging her Tesla with a dangerous electrical surge. She demanded $25,000 in damages, painting herself as the victim of a malicious neighbor. On paper, it looked outrageous, but lawsuits, even frivolous ones, carry weight.
and Daniel now found himself drawn into a legal battlefield. He hired an attorney, a calm, sharp-eyed woman named Rachel, who had seen dozens of HOA feuds escalate to court. "Don't worry," she told him, sliding through the evidence. "This isn't just weak, it's self-destructive. Once we expose her pattern of behavior, the judge will see the truth." Meanwhile, Karen escalated her smear campaign. She told anyone who would listen that Daniel was a bully, that he had endangered her safety, that she was the victim of electrical sabotage. Flyers appeared on neighborhood mailboxes. Rumors spread like wildfire. For a while, Daniel could feel the weight of suspicion in the glances of strangers, but he knew time and truth were on his side. The day of the hearing arrived. The courtroom was quiet, sterile, the air thick with tension. Karen strutted in, dressed sharply, confidence painted across her face like armor. Daniel sat across from her, calm, his evidence neatly stacked. The judge entered and the trial began. Karen's lawyer spun a tale of sabotage and cruelty, portraying Daniel as a neighbor obsessed with destroying her. But when it came time for cross-examination, Rachel dismantled the story piece by piece. "Miss Karen," she asked firmly, "is this you in the video footage plugging into Mr. Daniel's outlets?" Karen shifted uncomfortably. I can't say for sure." Rachel clicked the remote. The video zoomed in. Karen's face, unmistakable, illuminated by the glow of the Tesla charger. Gasps echoed in the courtroom. Rachel continued, "Is this your signature on the HOA fine for stealing utilities?" "Yes, but... and are these the utility records showing Mr. Daniel's power consumption skyrocketing exactly when your car was charging at night?" Karen stammered, trapped in a cage of her own lies. The judge leaned forward, hands folded, his words cut like steel. "Miss Karen, not only is there no evidence of sabotage, but the overwhelming evidence shows you committed theft of utilities. This case is dismissed. Furthermore, the court will consider sanctions for filing a frivolous lawsuit." Karen's face flushed crimson. The gavel struck like thunder, sealing her defeat. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. What little credibility Karen clung to evaporated. Neighbors who once feared her now avoided her. Parents pulled their children closer when she passed. She had become the very thing she hated most, a pariah in her own community. But Daniel's story didn't stop there. Weeks later, the utility company completed their investigation. Their report confirmed Karen had bypassed his power for months, costing him nearly $500 in stolen electricity. Combined with the HOA fines and legal fees, Karen now faced a mountain of debt. In one final act of irony, her Tesla, the very car she flaunted as a symbol of superiority, sat dead in her driveway for weeks. Repairs cost more than she could afford. The once proud status symbol now rusted quietly, a monument to her downfall. The neighborhood changed too. Without Karen's constant policing, life grew lighter. Kids played freely, neighbors chatted openly, and the shadow of HOA tyranny lifted. Daniel, once quiet and reserved, became a quiet hero in the eyes of many, not for seeking revenge, but for standing firm, calmly, against injustice. Karen eventually sold her home, forced out by debts and shame. Her departure was quiet, no fanfare, no farewells, just a moving truck one morning and an empty driveway by evening. For the first time in years, the cul-de-sac exhaled in peace. And Daniel, he carried on. No gloating, no celebrations, just the quiet dignity of a man who knew he had stood for what was right. His story became a lesson whispered in the neighborhood. Don't mistake kindness for weakness. Even the quiet ones will rise when pushed too far. In the end, Karen's Tesla wasn't the only thing fried. It was her pride, her reign of entitlement, and her illusion of untouchable power. And the neighborhood, once ruled by fear, now thrived in freedom. Justice, at last, had spoken.
In the end, Karen's downfall wasn't just about stolen electricity or a fried Tesla battery. It was about something deeper: entitlement meeting accountability. For years, she had hidden behind the rules, bending them, twisting them, using the HOA as her weapon.
She believed money, arrogance, and intimidation made her untouchable. But in one quiet cul-de-sac, a man named Daniel proved otherwise. His victory wasn't loud, but it was powerful. He didn't fight fire with fire. He fought lies with truth, arrogance with patience, and manipulation with evidence. And in doing so, he exposed not just Karen's behavior, but the fragile empire she built on fear. The neighborhood moved on, stronger, wiser, and finally free. Children laughed again, families bonded again, and Daniel's story became a quiet reminder that justice, though slow, always arrives. And perhaps the greatest irony of all, Karen's Tesla, once the shining proof of her superiority, ended as nothing more than an expensive paperweight. A symbol that no matter how fast you think you're moving, you can't outrun the truth. This wasn't just a feud. It was a reckoning.